your opposition, announced he was running. This is what he had to say.
Your opponent, this fat Jew. So he's not from Israel, but you called a guy in Florida this fat Jew. How is that not anti-Semitic?
Well, he's a Jewish supremacist, and he puts Israel before America, and I think that he should be tried for treason.
This fat Jew is anti-Semitic.
Yes. Dan. I mean, that's what you say, but how about
that's
every single time
that's what I know. I don't say it. I know
he literally talks about how Muslims are lower than dogs. So is that Islamophobic?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And that wouldn't be, that's not appropriate for him to say either. If he had said that.
But he does all the time. And he tweets that. And he's a senator.
Are you anti-Semitic?
No, I'm not anti-Semitic. I think that, that's kind of a made-up term. I think the Palestinians are the real Semites.
Term?
Yes, because if you look at what a Semite is.
Was Hitler anti-Semitic?
What's that?
Was Hitler anti-Semitic?
Like I said, it's the term is focused solely on Jews, but actual Semites are the Arabs, and Palestinians are Semites as well, and they actually have more DNA lineage to that.
I can only take so much of him. So my question, bringing that up, is there's a rumor that he doesn't even live in the area. How can you run and you don't live in the area? Is that true? And tell me about the area that you're running for and the makeup of it.
It's 100% true. Dan lives in Las Vegas. So under the Constitution, it says that you have to live in the state in which you represent. So what Dan has said is if he wins, that he'll move to Florida. Doesn't mean he has to move to the 6th Congressional District. Right now, Randy Fine does not live in the 6th Congressional District. He lives 100 miles south in Melbourne Beach. Closest point is Daytona, which is 95 to 100 miles away. So you don't have to live in the district. That's in the Constitution, but you do have to live in the state. So Dan would have to move from Nevada to Florida in order to represent Florida's 6th Congressional District. As far as the makeup of the Congressional District, this Congressional District on the coastal side starts at Daytona Beach, goes up about 60 miles to St. Augustine Beaches, so just to the south of St. Augustine, and basically goes over to the middle of the state, all of Putnam County, so very rural area, about half of Marion County, which is known as the horse capital of the world, down to where I live in Lake County, and then over to Volusia County, where Daytona Beach is, and then right in the midst of everything is Flagler County. So, Flagler Beach, very historic area. They're celebrating their 100th birthday this year. So there's a lot of rich history here, especially being so close to St. Augustine, literally on the outskirts. But the demographic is much older. And this is a conversation that I had with Dan before he announced that he was going to run. I said, Dan, you have to understand the people here. The average voting age in the Republican primary, and this was a conversation that I had with Nick also yesterday. The average voting age in the Republican primary is 57 years old. I don't care if you have 30 million Instagram followers. That makes no difference to anyone unless, somebody sent me a message today and they're like, is there any circumstance in which you would drop out and endorse Dan? I said, well, first of all, Dan isn't even registered to vote in Florida. And secondly, Dan hasn't even filed the paperwork to run in Florida. He's filed the federal paperwork to form a committee and raise money, but he hasn't filed the paperwork to run in this congressional district. I've already collected the candidate petitions to be on the ballot, so I'll be on the ballot no matter what, and I don't have to pay this time. But I think it's a complete misunderstanding of the political system and this congressional district. And you're not going to reshape. You're not going to take an electorate that's 57 years old and switch that to 20 years old in the matter of 2 months. You have to be registered to vote by July the 20th in order to vote in the August 18th primary. and you have to be registered Republican. So unless, you know, him and his band of whoever are going to come down here and register 20,000 people a month in the next 30 days, and then 20,000 people again in the following 30 days. I mean, you're talking about trying to register, you know, 600 people a day for 60 days straight to get in anywhere close to the numbers that you would need in order to redraw the demographic of this congressional district. And it's, you know, it's simply not possible.
Well, all he did, and this was my main thing, and Aaron, I messaged you this privately. He split the vote. And poly markets are saying Randy Fine now has a better chance to win, by the way, now that he's entered the race. Go ahead, Mia. What's your next question?
I was going to say the same thing. So it appears to me that Dan Bilzerian is probably being paid by some sort of offshore account from Randy Fine's Israeli backers, because he did it very strategically and very beautifully. So you could have been a very good contender, or you are a very good contender, but now we have Dan Bilzerian, who obviously it's very hard to go up against somebody like Dan Bilzerian just because he has the kind of name recognition. Like, you see him, you know who he is. I mean, most people know who he is, especially if you're very tuned into social media, YouTube, all of it. And a lot of men follow him as well because of the kind of lifestyle that he lives or has previously lived. He's like this poker guy, allegedly, or whatever. But basically what he did is come in and split the vote. So it's almost like he's going so anti-Jew, so anti-Semitic, so hard on Randy Fine. It's almost like that's on purpose. Like he's being paid by the same people that he's talking crap on purposely to make it more difficult for you. So Randy Fine has a shoe-in because now Dan Bilzerian is splitting the votes and
Well,
making it harder.
I think Dan is taking away a certain percentage of votes. But again, if we go back to the electorate, you know, average 57.2 years old, how many men between the age of 18 and let's say 30 are registered to vote Republican? I looked at one precinct the other day, and you know, I can break it down because we've got all the voter files electronically on everything. And I looked at one precinct, and if I pulled up men between the ages of white men between the ages of 18 and 30 in that entire precinct, and keep in mind my precinct that I live in has about 800 people registered to vote in it, there were three, and none of the three had ever voted in a primary before. They had all voted in the last general election, but none of them had ever voted in a primary. So, you know, you're not only searching for the, you know, blue unicorn that is supposed to come save you, but you're searching for the blue unicorn with wings that doesn't exist. So, you know, I mean, good luck. But, you know, I think Dan is maybe a 3 to 5% candidate. I don't know how you get over that with the rhetoric that you have, or that, you know, that Dan has, because it's just not practical. You know, you're always going to get some people that are going to be like, I'm going to go vote for Dan. But you know, what you and I experience every day on online is not the reality of, you know, what's on the ground. If the reality of what's on the ground is the same as, you know, what's online, I would be sitting in Congress right now, and Randy Fine would be at home in Melbourne Beach because I would have won the last election. So I understand the difference between, you know, online and reality, and I think that that's something that Dan just doesn't want to take the time to even consider.
Well, my concern, Aaron, is there seems to be a coordinated attack, to Mia's point. Like, this is coordinated. First, it was him jumping in. Now, this attack on you. Also, this simultaneous attack on Nick Fuentes. I know you spoke with him. So I'm going to pivot to my next question. What happened with Azipac? Why are they now backing in? What have they told you? And what is your future support you'll be having? Do you have any other organizations backing you?
So that's a very interesting question because originally Azipac had reached out, and this was in the summer of last year, I think July, August, sometime of last year, and the first candidate they endorsed was Jose Vega. The second candidate that they endorsed was me, and the third candidate that they endorsed was Mike Wilnow, who was running in the 11th congressional district, which is right next to 6th here in Florida. So we had very good relationship. However, and both Mike and I had traveled from Florida to an event that Dr. Rechtenwald, who was the founder of Azipac, was at with Shabbos Kestenbaum in Atlantic City at Word War Debate. And this was back in, I think, January. So, these are people that we've met in person, people that we've talked to, people that we've sat down and had a meal with, both Mike and I. However, I think the problem is people think that, okay, if somebody has 30 million Instagram followers, that's going to help me raise more money. And that's going to help me do different things. If you look at the finances, and I'll let the independent journalist take a look at the finances of the PAC, but you can see where the money goes, and I don't think the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think that Azipac might have been started with the best of intentions, but I don't know that. I had conversations with him as recent as last week, and I spoke to the treasurer as recent as yesterday morning, who gave me no indication at all that they were going to drop me. And the conversations that I was having with them was specifically about Dan, because I said, how do you want me to still be a part of this PAC? How, at some point I may have to step away from this PAC because I don't agree with someone saying, I'm going to pick up arms and go exterminate Israelis. That to me is no better than Randy Fine saying, may the streets of Gaza overflow with their blood. So, we're trading, far right for ultra far right. I don't agree with either one of those positions. It's pretty simple for me. I just want to stop killing people. And then beyond that, we'll figure out a lot of other things. So I
can
don't
relate.
know.
I'm questioning, am I still a conservative or a Republican? Because I don't support this whole, giving endless money to Israel and killing kids, but I also don't support this far right extremism of lumping all Jewish people in this horrible box and saying that they're terrible, horrible people and we should just go after them. It gives me H vibes. It gives me Nazi vibes, and I'm not with that. And this is what he has to say, and then I'm gonna let Mia ask the last question. We just have a few more questions for you. This is what he said on Alex Jones.
So again, I want Israel to stop doing what it's doing. And Dan, do you think Israel's one monolith? Do you think they're all bad over there?
No, I don't think they're all bad, but I do think it's a sick society. And you brought up the shootings at the food station. There was, so many examples of just horrific things. Hind Rajab, Rachel Corrie, you've got there was the Palestinian ambulance workers that had their lights on. They're in uniform. They're going to help somebody, and they got gunned down by Israelis. Israel denied it, and then they found the footage in the shallow grave that they had buried these people. That showed exactly, what they said was a complete lie. They had just gunned down Palestinian ambulance workers. They've done so many atrocious acts. And you look at their society, and a lot of their society supports this. More than 50% support this genocide that's going on in Gaza. More than 50% believe that they're operating and living in apartheid and support it. So it's a society of supremacy, and that supremacist mindset comes from the Jewish religion in general, because Judaism believes that they are chosen by God and that they are better than other people. And if you look into the Talmud of what it says, it's okay to lie, cheat, and steal from non-Gentile or from Gentiles. Jews have different sets of laws than Gentiles. So they really look at themselves as being better than Gentiles and separate from Gentiles. And I think that is the source of the problem. It's not Israel, it's the religion, which is why, I'm not just anti-Zionism. I am against Jewish supremacy, because these problems have been occurring before Israel.
Okay, Mia, what's your question?
Yeah, obviously Dan he feels very strongly about Jewish people and Israeli residents. He clearly feels very strongly about that. I guess my biggest thing is we need a true America First candidate. Somebody who looks at the potholes and said those need to be filled. Why do we have other countries that get free healthcare, free college, but we're driving over potholes? Our bridges are closed. Our kids can't read. Right now, we have 14 million children in the United States. Obviously, that encompasses part of Florida as well that are food insecure, which is a fancy way of saying these children do not know when their next meal is going to come from. And we just keep perpetuating in this cycle of war, 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 while our kids are malnourished, while they're ill-educated, while the United States, the only reason we had any GDP growth was through tech. If you subtract the tech, we're actually a net negative because we're not producing anything. It's just tech investment at this point in time. So, it's a tall order for you to be America First and to get into Congress and to kind of dig your heels in. So what is your plan for that, to kind of perpetuate this America First narrative? Like, we're not giving money to people, we're going to feed our kids, and we're going to try like hell to actually fix this country before we start going and warring in other countries.
I think that we need to start electing people that still understand what's going on a daily basis. Yesterday was the last day that we could turn in candidate petitions, and I had one lady that had collected petitions down, actually in Melbourne, where Congressman Fine is from, and that's a pretty long drive. It's about 100 miles down there. So on the way back, I stopped to get gas, and I'm very fortunate that I can fill up my gas tank, and it was $124. Keep in mind I drive a Suburban. It has a huge gas tank, but still $124. But that's not the bad part. The bad part is the person in front of me. When I always look at how much gas the person before me got, and they got $3 worth of gas. That's not even a gallon of gas. That means that they can drive 6 or 7 miles to work. They probably can't afford to eat lunch, and then they can drive 6 or 7 miles back, and then pray that they have the money to get back to the gas station and do it again tomorrow. The idea that now, there's a bill in Congress that we're going to pay for IDF soldiers' health care and benefits. On what planet is this okay? To your point, we have food insecure people in every neighborhood now, and it's gotten so much worse with the price of gas going up by, roughly 55% or so. Parents can't afford to feed their kids. Parents can't afford to feed themselves. They can't afford to, they can barely afford to get to work, and that's it. We have to stop the madness. We have to stop funding these foreign wars. We have to stop, helping everyone else on the planet and help ourselves. And dear Lord, at some point we have to start paying down our debt. Once our debt exceeds 25%, once the service on the debt exceeds 25% of our total budget, there's very little practical way that we can turn back. We have to get to a point of Rand Paul common sense of being able to cut 6 cents off the budget, to be able to say, okay, maybe the Department of War, Department of Defense, whatever you want to call it, I really don't care, doesn't need $1 trillion. We're spending more on the Department of War than we are on Social Security. And what we've done over the years is we've stolen the retirement from our seniors because they're not getting a cost of living increase. I mean, are you kidding me? When you have inflation at 6 or 7%, and then you give them a 2.8% cost of living increase, you're stealing more and more money from seniors. I have so many seniors right here in this congressional district that live in mobile home parks, manufactured home communities where the ground rent keeps going up and up and up. And some of them, it's gone from $900 4 years ago to $1,700 or $1,800 a month now. And if I take a single widow that's on Social Security and she's getting $2,304 a month, and now all of a sudden she's paying $1,800 a month just to be able to keep a roof over her head for ground rent. This one specific lady told me, she said, Aaron, my dog is 16 years old, and I have to decide if I'm going to feed my dog or if I'm going to eat because I don't have the money to do both. And that's not the America that I grew up in, and that's not the America that I want for our senior citizens, and it's not the America that I want for the next generation.